Hi guys, so I am back with a new video, but first and foremost, here is the birthday fit. So it didn't end up as crazy as last night's look, but I really think that I burnt out after last night because I spent so much time on my hair and whatnot. But yeah, this is, I'm not mad at it. I actually think it looks quite adult. In a certain sense, I love the halter detail of this dress. It's very mid-2000s, and believe it or not, this dress is off-brand. So I bought it to go with the Louis Vuitton shoes I bought in a previous haul video I made in like December. And then I added this brooch right here to it, which I think is really cute, and adds kind of like a ageha K type of touch. And then I just add this little necklace as a cute little detail as well because it's pink and silver, and the silver kind of goes with the Louis Vuitton shoes. So now that that's out of the way, I guess we should get on to this chatty gal video, and this one's gonna be really intimate. And I feel like this is one of those that's controversial, but like I think I need to put a disclaimer out first before I make this one. Advice videos are each onto their own. And you really have to look at who is giving you advice. Like, if I'm not your girl, if I'm not the person that you want to take style advice from or lifestyle advice from when it comes to Gyaru, then this probably isn't the video for you. There's plenty of other really great gals in the community that prioritize different aspects and things in this fashion, and they can give you really useful advice as well. This is just my take on stuff, so take it with a grain of salt. It'll be either helpful or it won't be. Like I said, this is just my perspective. So yeah. So if you're still here, I thought I would do a Gyaru advice video today for my chatty gal video, and this is because a lot of times in my DMs I get a lot of new gals or potential gals or even like normal gals that are just a seasoned who want my like hot take on something or advice, and I thought I'd just make this video as kind of a well-rounded approach to some of those questions. Like I said, everybody's gonna have their own approach to these sort of things. This is just my approach going into this, but yeah, I thought I'd cover some of those today. So I guess we should get started. So my first piece of advice is probably my largest piece of advice, but there's like one thing you take away from this video, let it be this, and that is please do Gyaru for the right reasons. And I say this because a lot of people go into this fashion, right, and they invest all this money and time into it, and they suddenly end up feeling very unfulfilled, or they kind of have an identity crisis for a little while. And that can be for a variety of different reasons. A lot of people think that Gyaru is lower maintenance or cheaper to do than some of the other Japanese fashions out there, like Lolita or Visual Kei. That's the biggest lie ever. Let me just tell you that now. That, or like notoriously from what I've noticed, a lot of people will see a very well-known gal in the community or a couple really well-known gals in the community, and because it's such a niche community, they'll think, oh, I can do this and I will get just as big as them, because of course, like when you look up to people, you kind of do want to aspire to be just like them, right? But the thing is that's not the right reason to do things. You need to do things because you relate to it, because it speaks to you, not because you want in for, unfortunately this is going to be the word that I hear a lot, and even I've said it guiltily enough, clout. It's just, what you'll realize is that there's not many people doing Gyaru, and even in Japan there are Gyaru, but the look is very different, and a lot of people that are into the fashion overseas are really into the old school way of doing things from either the 90s or the early, mid, or late 2000s, from what I've realized, and maybe a little bit of the 2010s, but for the most part a lot of people are really appealed to the older styles that just really aren't trending anymore, and there's not a lot of resources out there for that. I mean, there's a lot of archived stuff, but in terms of things still existing, you're gonna be disappointed. Basically, a lot of people come into this fashion and realize it's a lot more work than what they anticipated for it to be, and that it's a lot harder to really gain the social media traction that they want or whatever they're trying to do. And like I said, if this isn't speaking to you and you're really not interested in hair or makeup or fashion, then this probably isn't the style for you, because it's a lot and it's really, really expensive. Like it can add up. I even, when I first started, looked at like the old Gyaru Angelique videos and was like, well, if they're fucking broke, then I can do it. And then I liked Agajo, which is like the most expensive style maybe outside of Hime to do, and I'm just, what a mistake. So don't fall into that pit. This J fashion style is just as high maintenance as the others, and you really want to make sure that you're committing before you just like throw away your money into the ocean drain. That, or before you start putting yourself down or feeling like you're not accomplishing your goals within this fashion, because you might have approached this or done this for possibly a wrong reason. Basically, do Gyaru for the right reason, do things for you, and you'll be a-okay. This brings me into the question that I am asked on a daily basis. Like, I'd be rich for how many times I've been asked, where can I buy d.i.a? Does d.i.a still exist? Does Mars still exist? Where can I buy Alba? Things like that. And unfortunately, the style that you guys like of Gyaru fashion died forever ago. None of these brands exist in 109 anymore. Mars does, but it's more d.i.a now rather than Gyaru. And as for like brands like d.i.a just closed after the pandemic, I think, a little bit. And then Alba's been long gone for a really long time. So fortunately and unfortunately, you're going to have to be really reliant on the secondhand market to get some of these things that you guys are asking me about. And in the past year to 2 years, it has gotten way, way crazy. And what I mean by this is some of the stuff that I used to get for like $10 is like $50 now. Like, the prices are not normal, and that's because there's a huge scalping problem going on in most J fashion communities right now, and it's why a lot of veteran gals aren't very open with their brand names right now. And it's not because they don't want to help you, it's the fact that they don't know if you're going to stay in long term, or if you're just asking to be in this to try it out and then scalp it later on. Because it's technically taking from people who have worked hard and who've done the research and probably are going to commit for a while. And it's definitely not to be a snob, it's just an issue that has been going on for a while, and unfortunately it's hurt everyone. Everybody loses in this situation, unfortunately. Even I have lost in this situation, because it's not just me hoarding clothes. I will try to find things for friends. I'm always trying to find things for my friends, and it is the most nightmarish, frustrating thing I ever have to go through when they're just like, hey, can you find me this piece? And I'm just like, this is impossible, and I really don't want you to pay this price. Why is this so stupid right now? This was like $15 2 months ago and so easy to find, and now this is like a nightmare. So yeah, that's the real tea. And all I can tell you, there's 2 things I can tell you. Don't support scalpers. Don't do it. Don't give Depopers who are charging you $160 for a Mars set that type of money. I don't care how rare it is. It's used. It's not Lolita where it increases in value. Not only that, but some of the stuff is really cheaply made anyway. Like, it's really intricate, and like that's the thing I do appreciate about like a lot of J fashion clothes. They're really intricate and stuff, but in terms of some of this stuff, guys, just be careful. Like, don't get scammed. My second piece of advice is to make sure you're gonna commit, and in the meantime, try to find off-brand pieces that you know can kind of work for the fashion. Because the thing is when you first start out in Gyaru, you can kind of, I don't want to say you can kind of make anything look Gyaru. That's not necessarily the case if you want to do a sub-style, but I really don't think when you're first starting out you should really commit to a sub-style, because it's really overwhelming, and yes, it's very immersive, and Gyaru is all about immersion. That I agree with. But you really should be working on your hair and your makeup first. You should really be investing in magazines to kind of do research or look at Instagram accounts or your favorite blogs before you really make that leap into buying a ton of brand name. Trust me, you'll save yourself the time and the energy. And then maybe in like 6 months to a year, if you're still in this, then you can buy your brand name pieces. Now, why I say that this is really important is because I'm taking this from my own personal experience and a lot of older people's personal experience. Being able to easily import things has not always been a thing. Back 10 years ago, it was very expensive to do. And 15 years ago, a lot of us were just looking at J-Fashion magazines and scans online. And I don't think we ever really fathomed the fact that we'd own this shit unless we like flew over to Japan or had like a middleman help us get things. So it made us really have to do our research, and we wanted to know everything about the fashion. And then once we had been in it for a while, then we were able to get brand when it was easier to get. This brings me to another piece of clothing advice for you guys that's beyond the secondhand market. And I think this is really important, and this is really gonna help support designers and models that you guys really admire today, because unfortunately there isn't a lot out there. So you guys should cling on to the things that do exist and do align with what you like. So if there's a model you like that comes out with a brand, or a designer you really like, or a collaboration between a model and a designer, support the shit out of it. I know you guys are used to retail and secondhand market prices being dirt cheap, but you know, sometimes you gotta put out the big money for the big boutiques sometimes, especially to show that you're interested and you want this brand to stay alive. I've definitely done that in the past. When Liz Lisa visited, I spent my money. When Ghost of Harlem came down, I spent my money. When Mars came down, I spent my money. And it really just shows like, hey, I'm a big fan of you and I support your work and I really want you to have a long-lasting place in the fashion world, is what that says. So if you guys kind of want to go back to the glory days, hype up the stuff that you like and make it known that those are the things that you like that are still alive. If there's things that are still alive, I beg of you, support the shit out of it. So now I'm gonna move away from like shopping and into like actually styling clothes. Like, let's say that you're first delving into gal fashion and you either want to buy your first pieces of brand or you're first putting together an outfit. Something that I notice a lot of like new gals or potential gals do is they habitually throw loose socks or leg warmers onto everything, and that's not always necessary. It's really, really cute with suyome styles like what d.i.a does, and obviously loose socks go with cold Gyaru, but for instance, you wouldn't do like agejo with loose socks or specific things with loose socks, and it's not a requirement to have that to be Gyaru. So a big newbie mistake that I notice is the clashing of the brands. Now, I'm not saying that you can't mix brand together. You can totally mix brand together. It's just you have to pay attention to what goes with what. Like, for instance, like all the agejo brands would probably go with other agejo brands, depending on like the cut and the color and things like that. That's another thing you should pay attention to, is like color and cut and texture. All of that will save you some time there and you'll have like a bomb ass outfit. But I notice a lot of people, like for instance, people will throw an alba jacket with like anything and everything, and that doesn't always necessarily work. It starts looking really costumey when it's just thrown with anything. And what I mean by this is like, for instance, like you can't really throw alba with Liz Lisa or alba with Mars. It's two clashing things. It's like oil and water. They don't mix. Because they're two entirely opposite aesthetics from two entirely different points of time. Doesn't mean that you're not allowed to do it. You can do what you want. I'm just saying that like sometimes it can look a little costumey or a little out of place, and that's why, because they're from two different aspects of this fashion and even like entirely different years, thus they are not really made to go together. Same goes with d.i.a. I notice a lot of people throw d.i.a belts with just everything and anything, and sometimes it does work. Sometimes you can really pull it off, and other times I'm just like, you don't need to throw that with that together. Like, there's some people, I will say, they're really clever. They come up with some interesting things I've never seen before and stuff. So I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying, just because you have like a brand item and whatnot doesn't mean that it always goes with everything. So you don't have to mismatch brands together to have a good outfit. Like, you could have, like, for instance, like, I have a jacket that looks like Alba next to me, and I know what to put it with, and there's like Shein things I have that can go with it. There's nothing wrong with putting things that you already have in your closet that like look cohesive and that match together with brand. If anything, that's even more interesting, because a lot of us have seen like brand on brand together, but if you put stuff with like off brand, it's interesting because maybe we haven't seen that before. So yeah, don't feel like you have to like throw a bunch of brands together for it to be gal enough, because sometimes it can just look costumey and out of place. You can definitely throw what you already have or off-brand items with brand, and it's fine. You're allowed to do that. It's okay. I do it all the time. Like, even what I'm wearing today is off-brand. This is a Macy's halter dress from the 2000s, and I have like a little brooch from a brand item on this, and it works out fine. It looks very agehake in my opinion. So I mean, do what you gotta do. Like, when it really comes down to it, it's really just paying attention to what models are wearing or where you're taking your inspiration from. Okay, now we're finally moving away from clothes, and I'm gonna talk about makeup, because makeup is a really big part of this fashion. And if you're not really into hair and makeup, this fashion isn't for you. You're gonna find it tedious, you're gonna find it exhausting, you're not gonna want to grow or learn because you have no interest in it. So if that's not for you, definitely not for you. But if you're interested in this type of thing, there's a couple of tips that I can give you. So, tip number 1, there's not one way to do Gyaru eye makeup. So I see a lot of newbies do the big droop and the matte white in here with everything, anything, and they are taking that from Black Diamond or they're taking it from another source, but that doesn't always go with things like Himikaji or Agejo. Much like with clothes, you gotta pay attention to what year you're taking from, what magazine you're taking from, what model you're being inspired from. All of that, you gotta keep that in mind. And with that being said, there's definitely more than one way to do Gyaru eye makeup. For instance, for Himekashi and Agejo, we typically like to do the droop overhead instead of under. So we do kind of a puppy liner and we go all the way down. And then we like to blend our bottom lashes with our real bottom lashes, and we put black in the waterline here, and instead of doing a matte white highlight and like all the way down, what we do typically is we'll throw a very blendable glittery white eyeshadow underneath, or we'll do like a liquid eyeshadow and like blend it out with a brush, and that typically gives us the shape that we want. This can also kind of work for like Suyome styles too. A lot of d.i.a shop staff or people who wear d.i.a also kind of do this eye makeup. It's a little bit more modern, but like, I understand where like the droop and everything is also coming from. You guys are taking from Black Diamond, or you're taking from the Mamba and Yamamba models from the early 2000s. Scaffolding off of this, just because one style of makeup works for one person doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. That is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, but it is the truth. Just because somebody else can get away with a harsh nose contour, for instance, doesn't mean that me or another person can. I've actually had this conversation with a friend before, and we jokingly were talking about how a nose contour can work on a lot of people, but if you kind of have like a ball at the nose tip and like a very high nose bridge, your contour will just start looking like Squidward's nose. You just start looking like Squidward. So what we typically do instead is we kind of contour the hollow of our eye and kind of go halfway in and stop. And sometimes we like contour at the very, 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 very tip, like right in here, and that's it. But yeah, like, see, that works for me, but that wouldn't necessarily work for another person. Same applies for eye makeup. Some people are able to get away with doing that gap in the bottom lashes where they can do that droop really, really well. Like, for instance, my friend Ichigo can get away with that and it looks so good on them. But because I have really long bottom lashes and high cheekbones, either my cheekbones get in the way or it looks like I'm wearing 2 sets of bottom lashes, so it doesn't work for me, but for other people it might work if they don't have as prominent bottom lashes and like their cheekbones aren't so freaking high up on their face. Like, same goes with like the really, really puffy eye bag look where like you put brown to make like a crease underneath the eye. I don't know why, but it doesn't work on me. I just start looking like Dobby the house elf. Now, with some people, it looks so cute and I'm so envious, but for me, it doesn't work for me for some reason, and that's okay. There's definitely going to be a makeup style or something that works for you. It's just going to take experimenting and figuring out your face. You're just gonna have to study the shit out of your face. You're gonna have to experiment with things. Something that's really popular is that a lot of the Gyaru in the community like taking inspiration or basing their eye makeup off of specific models. Like I said, works for some people. Definitely doesn't always work for me. It really depends on where I'm taking my eye makeup for the day. But we have to also keep in mind that a lot of these eye makeup looks are meant for gals who are Japanese, and some of us are Western, so our eyelids and our faces in general are just shaped differently. Thus, we need to do makeup that kind of works for our face. Speaking of doing makeup that works for your face shape, I think this is gonna move me into a social issue, and it's one of the most highly debated topics on the internet right now when it comes to Gyaru fashion or just J fashion in general. I get asked a lot, hey, I really like Gyaru, but I was told it's not okay to do because it's XYZ fishing, like it's race fishing. And I'm here to tell you, as somebody who's done this for a very, very long time, this has never been a huge debate or an issue at all until a couple years ago, and I'm here to confirm to you, none of us are trying to be a different race at all. Gyaru fashion has always been inspired by stuff from overseas. If anything, Gyaru is quite international, and their fashion trends have always embraced things from overseas. For instance, old school Gyaru, they're obsessed with that beach life and vacation life and going to the islands. So like Malibu, beach babes, Hawaii, other islands all over the world. They're really, really into that. Then we have things like Coco Lulu that embraced amekaji as a sub-style. So you have a lot of American fashion inspired stuff, or what their interpretation of American fashion is, and they even have like retro stuff like 60s and 70s inspired prints if you go later on in time in the Coco Lulu archives. And then of course with Agajo, I'd like to think that we're really into Barbie, especially like early on. Ooh, everything was black and pink. We were the definition of wanting to be Barbie or Paris Hilton or just that heiress type of life. We're really into that type of thing. Well, I really don't think we're trying to be a different race. I think we just are really inspired all by each other. It's a huge, huge cultural exchange. If anything, they like our fashion, we like their interpretation of our fashion, we even like their fashion, and it's just an exchange, a constant exchange back and forth all the time. So I really don't understand why this became such a huge debate. Like, I do understand it to a certain level, but some of the things that are controversial, some of y'all need to understand, especially if you're younger. To remind some of you new generation J-fashion enthusiasts that are just getting into things and are quite a bit younger, a lot of these controversial trends that you're seeing in Gyaru fashion or in other J-fashions are quite dated. And what I mean by that is they're 10 to 20 years old, and the internet was an entirely different place back then, especially 10 to 20 years ago. the internet was such a new thing back then. Not everybody was openly using it, and it was gaining speed, but not in the way that it is now. You guys are a constant loop of information and communication with each other in 2021. But that wasn't the case back then. So a lot of people weren't exposed to other people or other cultures. And a lot of people didn't talk to people from a different time zone than theirs. That's just the fact of it. So a lot of these fashions weren't done with bad intention. It's just a lot of stuff wasn't known yet. And some of the stuff that people didn't know was stuff that they relied on the media for, and we know how the media can be sometimes, right? Yeah. And this segues me into another important piece of social advice for you Gyaru newcomers, and that is, it is perfectly okay to be a solo Gyaru. You do not need the Gaijin Gyaru community to be like Gyaru enough. That isn't to discourage you from being a part of the Gaijin Gyaru community. There are so many people I know that have so much fun in the community. They are super active and they love talking to big groups of people and catching up with text, and they love participating in projects and sharing their coordinates, and they go to a ton of international meets, and it works out really, really well for them. And they get along with everybody. And unfortunately, some of us don't vibe with everybody, and we're a lot more introverted, and we just kind of thrive on our own platform, and I'm definitely one of those people. I have tried both. The community wasn't for me. I took a break from Gyaru because it was making me unhappy at one point, so I decided, hey, I'm gonna take out the things that make me unhappy and do the thing that makes me happy, and the thing that makes me happy is Gyaru fashion. So I did that, and I decided to stay on my own Instagram and have more of a personal relationship with the people who really, really supported me. And what I mean by this is I was really active on Instagram, YouTube, those type of places, and you guys are always sliding into my DMs, commenting on my stories, commenting on my posts, and I do the same for people who I know are definitely in my lane. Basically, I stay in my lane, and that's perfectly okay. Some of us, we're just introverted and we like doing our own thing, and that's perfectly okay. Like, you're still gonna make friends either way. It definitely takes a lot more work and a lot more commitment, but if you consistently reach out to people and be like, hey, what's up, kind of like your style, kind of into the same thing, eventually they'll reply to you and y'all will hit it off real well. Guarantee it. These are gonna be my last little bits before I end this video. First off, when it comes to constructive criticism and advice, and this can apply to me, you can use this on me, keep in mind where it's coming from. And what I mean by this is, if it's somebody you don't fuck with, or it's just somebody who's in a different substyle than you, you're not obligated to take that advice. You can do with it what you will. Instead, you know, seek out people who are in your lane or people who you look up to. That's the advice you want to take. Those people are going to be the most helpful to you. Period. Second off, this doesn't happen overnight. This is so much fucking hard work. Take it from somebody who's been in this for a really fucking long time. You're gonna go broke. You're gonna stab your eyeball out. You're gonna be frustrated with your makeup on some days. Your hair is gonna fall flat in the wind. Your feet are gonna fucking ache. You're gonna have moments where you're just like, why do I do this to myself? Like, do I really hate myself? And then you're gonna remind yourself, wow, I look great. Like, I'm having so much fun. Like, look at me transform myself. God damn. And it'll be all worth it, right? And I think if you have good intentions going into this, you're gonna have so much fun. And with that being said, you're enough. You're totally enough. Like I said before, this takes time. This isn't something that happens overnight, and if you seek out support from the right places, do things with the right intention, do your research, god damn it, you're gonna do great. You're doing great, sweetie. And with that being said, this is the end of this video. My god, that was loaded, but like I said before, I felt like this was necessary because I get a lot of messages on those things, and I just thought I would collectively cover everything that's ever been asked to me in my DMs. If you'd like more videos like this, feel free to drop more questions in my comment section or hit me up in my DMs. I'll eventually get to you. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Keep in mind where your advice is coming from. If you don't vibe with me, maybe you'll vibe with somebody else. But if you vibe with me, I hope this was helpful and that you learned a few things. Anyways, it's probably like in the AM hours. I am exhausted. I will talk to you guys some other time. Thank you guys for being patient and sticking with me. Until next time.